Good evening.
Guten Abend.
Let us begin with prayer.
Lass uns mit Gebet anfangen. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you for this evening.
Lieber himmlischer Vater, ich danke dir für diesen Abend.
I thank you that we can again gain new knowledge about you.
Danke, dass wir wieder eine neue Erkenntnis über dich gewinnen können.
And we really need to be transformed into your image.
Wir müssen wahrlich in dein Ebenbild geformt werden.
Help us therefore to fix our eyes now upon Jesus,
Und hilf uns deswegen, unsere Augen auf Christus zu richten.
and that you can draw us to his feet.
Und dass du uns zu seinen Füßen ziehen kannst.
And that you would make us humble like little children, that we would learn of you.
Und dass du uns demütig machst wie kleine Kinder und dass wir von dir lernen können.
And we ask for the presence of your Holy Spirit,
Und wir bitten jetzt um die Gegenwart deines Heiligen Geistes,
that he would convict us of sin and of righteousness and judgment,
dass er uns von Sünde, Gerechtigkeit und Gericht überführen möge.
and that we would understand this whole process of the judgment better,
Und dass wir diesen gesamten Prozess des Gerichts besser verstehen können.
and that it can produce faith in our hearts.
Und dass das dann Glauben in unserem Herzen produzieren kann.
And I ask now for your blessing on the study in Jesus' name. Amen.
Ich bitte jetzt um deinen Segen auf dieses Studium in Jesu Namen. Amen. Okay. I posted the notes. Unfortunately, I posted the wrong English ones. So now all the bold-faced is now gone, but doesn't matter, it's not so important.
Also ich habe jetzt die falschen Notizen hier gepostet im Englischen. Jetzt ist das Fettgedruckte im Englischen weg, aber das ist nicht so schlimm.
Okay, so because I forgot to save the bold-faced. So.
Weil ich habe eben vergessen, das Fettgedruckte zu speichern.
Alright, good. And this evening we want to look at this topic about it is done.
Und heute Abend wollen wir uns das Thema über es ist geschehen anschauen.
And we saw these two thrones in past studies, right?
Und in den vergangenen Studien haben wir diese zwei Throne gesehen.
Throne of grace, throne of glory.
Thron der Gnade, Thron der Herrlichkeit.
And we saw that always this phase here, this investigative judgment, precedes this final review.
Wir haben immer gesehen, dass diese Phase des Untersuchungsgerichts vor der finalen Überprüfung kommt.
Where the Lord offers you one last time this grace before the justice will come.
Wo der Herr dir ein letztes Mal diese Gnade anbietet, bevor die Gerechtigkeit kommt.
Okay, and so in this study we want to look at now this point when the Lord says it is done.
Und in diesem Studium wollen wir uns diesen Punkt anschauen, wenn der Herr sagt, es ist geschehen.
Good. So let's go now to this first quote.
Gehen wir jetzt zum ersten Zitat.
And this speaks about the cross.
Und das spricht über das Kreuz.
And it says here, when Christ cried, "It is finished," God's unseen hand rent the strong fabric composing the veil of the temple from top to bottom. So when did Jesus cry, "It is finished"?
Wann hat Jesus gerufen, es ist vollbracht?
9th hour,
In
right?
der 9. Stunde.
The way into the holiest of all was made manifest. God bowed his head, satisfied. Now his justice and mercy could blend. He could be just and yet the justifier of all who should believe on Christ. He looked upon the victim expiring on the cross and said, "It is finished. The human race shall have another trial." The redemption price was paid and Satan fell like lightning from heaven. So, when Christ cried out, "It is finished," who else said "It is finished"?
Also als Christus rausgerufen hat, es ist vollbracht, wer hat noch gesagt, es ist vollbracht?
The Father,
Der
right?
Vater.
Okay, so both said at the 9th hour, "It is finished." Okay.
Beide haben an der 9. Stunde gesagt, es ist vollbracht.
Now let us go to the next quote,
Gehen wir jetzt zum nächsten Zitat.
and here's this where it speaks about the end of the investigative judgment.
Und
Okay.
hier spricht Ellen White über das Ende des Untersuchungsgerichts.
And it says here, "All heaven had united with Jesus as they heard the fearful words, 'It is done, it is finished.' The plan of salvation had been accomplished, but few had chosen to accept it. and mercy's sweet voice died away. Fear and horror seized the wicked. With trembling distinctness, they heard the words. With terrible distinctness, they heard the words, "Too late, too late." So here, what does Sister White join together?
Was verbindet hier Ellen White?
It is done, it is finished.
Es ist geschehen, es ist vollbracht.
Good. Let us now go to the next quote.
Gehen wir jetzt zum nächsten Zitat.
It says, "I saw angels hurrying to and fro in heaven. An angel with a writer's inkhorn by his side returned from the earth and reported to Jesus that his work was done, and the saints were numbered and sealed. Then I saw Jesus, who had been ministering before the ark containing the Ten Commandments, throw down the censer." So that's Revelation 8, right? When he now cast down the censer.
Das ist Offenbarung 8, wenn er das Räuchergefäß runterwirft.
He raised his hands and with a loud voice said, "It is done." And all the angelic host laid off their crowns as Jesus made the solemn declaration, "He that is unjust, let him be unjust still, and he which is filthy, let him be filthy still. And he that is righteous, let him be righteous still, and he that is holy, let him be holy still." Okay, so it's right here at when he now cast down the censer, right?
Das ist genau hier, wenn er jetzt das Räuchergefäß runterwirft.
When he stops his intercession.
Wenn er seine Fürbitte aufhört.
So, based on this illustration, where would this be?
Und basierend auf dieser Darstellung, wo wäre das?
Right?
Hier.
Okay, let me just erase these things here. I don't need them at the moment.
Ich mache das nochmal weg, das brauchen wir im Moment nicht.
So. So he throws down the censer, says it is done. So it's at the end of the investigative judgment,
Er
right?
wirft das Räuchergefäß runter und sagt, es ist geschehen, es ist am Ende des Untersuchungsgerichts.
And what does he then say?
Was sagt er dann?
Yes, he that is unjust, let him be unjust still, and he which is filthy, let him be filthy still, right?
Also wer ungerecht ist, sei weiterhin ungerecht, und wer schmutzig ist, sei weiterhin schmutzig.
But he that is righteous, let him be righteous still.
Aber der gerecht ist, der soll weiterhin gerecht sein.
So, okay, because there now your case is determined, right?
Weil da ist dein Fall entschieden.
So let's go now to the book of Revelation, because this is where it's taken from.
Gehen wir zum Buch Offenbarung, weil daher ist es entnommen.
Revelation 22.
Offenbarung 22.
Verse 6.
Vers 6.
And he said unto me, These things are faithful and true. And the Lord God of the holy prophets sent his angel to show unto his servants the things which must shortly be done. Behold, I come quickly. Blessed is he that keepeth the sayings of the prophecy of this book. So, verse 6, what is it? Where's the parallel verse to verse 6
Also wo ist der parallele Vers zu Vers 6
in the book of Revelation?
im Buch Offenbarung?
Yeah, chapter 1, verse 1, right?
Kapitel 1, Vers 1.
Because it says here, he sent his angel to show unto his servants the things which must shortly be done, right?
Sagt, die Dinge, die in Kürze geschehen sollen, hat er ihm
So
gezeigt.
just keep your finger here, let's go to Revelation 1:1.
Also haltet euren Finger hier, geht zur Offenbarung 1, Vers 1.
It says here, the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave unto him, to show unto his servants things which must shortly come to pass. And he sent and signified it by his angel unto his servant John. Right? So same language, same illustration.
Das ist dieselbe Sprache, dieselbe Darstellung.
Good. And when we go back to chapter 22,
Und wenn wir zurück zu Kapitel 22 gehen,
verse 7, what would this be?
was wäre Vers 7?
Matthew 25, verse 6. Closed door.
Yeah, it's the midnight cry, right?
Also Matthäus 25, Vers 6, der Mitternachtsruf.
Behold, he cometh with clouds.
Sie kommt mit den Wolken.
So, therefore, we can see marks it when John is now receiving here this little book, and at the end it would be then, this midnight cry going forth, right?
Daher können wir sehen, dass es, wenn Johannes das kleine Büchlein erhält und das ist, dann wird der Mitternachtsruf eben vorwärts gehen.
Okay, verse 8.
Vers 8.
And I, John, saw these things and heard them, and when I had heard and seen, I fell down to worship before the feet of the angel which showed me these things. Then saith he to me, See thou do it not, for I am thy fellow servant, and of thy brethren the prophets, and of them which keep the sayings of the book, worship God. And he saith unto me, Seal not the sayings of the prophecy of this book, for the time is at hand. So, what is he not to do?
Was soll nicht tun?
Yeah, not to seal up, right?
Er soll es nicht versiegeln,
For the time is at hand.
denn die
Okay.
Zeit ist nahe.
Pointing now down to this judgment here at the end, right?
Und er weist dann auf dieses Gericht am Ende hin.
Okay. Because when Joseph stood before Pharaoh, what did he tell him?
Weil als Josef vor dem Pharao stand, was hat er ihm gesagt?
Yeah, things that would shortly come to pass, right?
Dinge, die in Kürze geschehen werden.
Pointing down to here where the 7 good years would begin.
Und er
Okay.
weist dann darauf, wenn die 7 guten Jahre anfangen.
Okay. So, and he was able to unseal the book to Pharaoh,
Und
right?
er war in der Lage, dem Pharao das Buch zu entsiegeln.
Okay, verse 11.
Vers 11.
He that is unjust, let him be unjust still, and he which is filthy, let him be filthy still, and he that is righteous, let him be righteous still, and he that is holy, let him be holy still. So here is now this saying, right?
Da finden wir diesen Ausdruck.
In verse 12.
In Vers 12.
And behold, I come quickly, and my reward is with me, to give every man according as his work shall be. I'm Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. So here, same message again, behold, I come quickly.
Das ist wieder dieselbe Botschaft, also siehe, ich komme schnell.
Okay, so, and this is important because we saw here that in this quote, Sister White marked this saying here, when Christ throws down the censer. Right?
Das ist wichtig, weil Ellen White hat in diesem Zitat also diesen Ausdruck hier genommen und markiert, wenn Christus das Räuchergefäß runterwirft.
So at the end of the investigative judgment, he says it is done, and then he says, he that is unjust, let him be unjust still.
Also am Ende des Untersuchungsgerichts sagt er, es ist geschehen, und dann sagt er, wer ungerecht ist, sei weiterhin ungerecht.
So that would be here for this group, right?
Das wäre hier für diese Gruppe.
And for this group would be here, right?
Und für diese Gruppe wäre das hier.
Okay. Right. So, and as soon as he says this, he would now change to the final review respectively, right?
Und sobald er das sagt, dann wird er eben zur finalen Überprüfung übergehen.
Good. And when you go now to Daniel chapter 7,
Gehen wir noch zu Daniel 7.
and verse 9
Vers 9
and 10.
und 10.
Says, I beheld till the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head like the pure wool. His throne was like the fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire. So here we see this throne, right?
Hier sehen wir diesen Thron.
A fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The judgment was set, and the books were opened. So which throne would this be here?
Welcher Thron wäre das?
Glory. His
Yeah.
throne, his own throne.
Yeah, when Christ sits on it, it's the throne of glory, right?
Wenn Christus drauf sitzt, dann ist eben der Thron der Herrlichkeit.
And where on the line would this be now? Here?
Wo wäre das jetzt auf der Linie?
Final review.
Okay, yes, and which one?
Finale Überprüfung und welches?
At the end.
This one, right?
Also dieses hier.
Because this is where he sees the little horn,
The beast get punished.
which would come up, right, in here, and then at the end it gets punished, right?
Weil da sieht er das kleine Horn, was ja hier aufkommen würde, und das wird dann hier am Ende bestraft werden.
Yeah, so here it gets punished, but this judgment he now sees here, okay?
Also am Ende wird es bestraft, aber hier sieht er jetzt eben dieses Gericht.
So when Christ is now the Ancient of Days, he sits on the throne of glory, and the books are open, it says, okay?
Christus, der Alter an Tagen sitzt auf dem Thron der Herrlichkeit, und es sagt, die Bücher sind geöffnet.
But we also know, when we just keep your finger here in Daniel, let's go to Matthew 22.
Deshalb haltet euren Finger hier in Daniel und geht zu Matthäus 22.
Verses 4 to 7.
Verse 4 bis 7.
That's now this second invitation to this marriage supper.
Das ist jetzt die zweite Einladung zum Hochzeitsmahl.
It says, again he sent forth other servants, saying, tell them which are bidden, behold, I have prepared my dinner, my ox and my fatlings are killed, and all things are ready come unto the marriage. So what do they say? They also say, behold, right?
Also sie sagen auch siehe.
They say, come to the marriage, okay?
Sie sagen, kommt zur Hochzeit.
It's like a midnight cry now to this group.
Das
Okay?
ist jetzt wieder Mitternachtsruf zu dieser Gruppe.
But they made light of it and went their ways, one to his farm, another to his merchandise. And the remnant took his servants and entreated them spitefully and slew them. But when the king heard thereof, he was wroth, and he sent forth his armies and destroyed those murderers and burned up their city. Right? What is this here?
Was
Verse
ist
7?
das hier in Vers 7?
Yeah, destruction of Jerusalem. Right?
Zerstörung von Jerusalem.
That point there in verse 4,
Mhm.
that's the point I was making this morning, or yesterday even, out there. The triumphal entry,
Yeah, it's
it's
before.
before the
Yes.
destruction of Jerusalem. That would be that one right there. Mark.
Yes.
Also das wäre eben der Punkt, den Bruder Mark auch gemacht hat. Also hier in Vers 4, dass dieser triumphale Einzug oder dieser Mitternachtsruf, das wäre der Ruf vor der Zerstörung von Jerusalem.
Because this is the one here where it says, behold, come to the marriage, right?
Marriage, yes.
Weil dort sagt es eben, siehe, kommt zu der Hochzeit.
But it's the cry to this group here,
Aber
right?
das ist der Ruf an diese Gruppe.
Okay. So, and at the end of this cry, what happens?
Und am Ende von diesem Ruf, was passiert?
The destruction.
Yeah, destruction of Jerusalem.
Die Zerstörung von
So
Jerusalem.
therefore, what must have happened
Deswegen,
just before it?
was muss kurz davor geschehen sein?
Yeah, the final review of
Yeah.
the vestige, isn't
So
it?
Christ must have sit on the throne of glory here, open the books, and then execute judgment.
Also
Okay.
die finale Überprüfung. Also Christus muss hier auf dem Thron der Herrlichkeit gewesen sein und dann die Bücher geöffnet haben und dann das Gericht ausgeführt haben.
Yes. Okay. That's where it says the king is wroth. He's king is Christ. He's no wrath, and then he executes judgment here. Okay.
Und, es sagt ja, der König ist zornig, deswegen dieser König ist Christus. Er ist zornig und führt dann das Gericht aus.
So once he destroyed Jerusalem here,
Und sobald er hier Jerusalem zerstört hat,
then it says in verse 8,
sagt es in Vers 8,
then saith he to his servants, the wedding is ready, but they which were bidden were not worthy. Go ye therefore into the highways, and as many as ye shall find bid to the marriage. So now he's here sending the servants to this group.
also jetzt ist er hier und sendet diese Knechte zu dieser Gruppe.
Therefore, on which throne is he now again?
Deswegen auf welchem Thron ist er jetzt wieder?
Yes.
Throne of grace, right?
Thron der Gnade.
Okay. Until here, when he throws down the censer, says, it is done, right?
Zu diesem Punkt, wenn er sagt, es ist geschehen und das Räuchergefäß runterwirft.
Because in Revelation chapter 8, let's turn there again.
Gehen wir nochmal zur Offenbarung 8.
Beginning in verse 1.
Wir fangen in Vers 1 an.
It's interesting, Lawrence, look on the chart. When Christ's sitting on the cloud, what's around him?
The rainbow.
It's the tent of grace. Man.
Yes.
Yeah, you had seen it somewhere, I was trying to think, where have I read that? And I looked up and then it was right there.
Yes.
Also bei der Karte auf der Wolke ist auch der Engel mit dem Regenbogen, also es ist eine Zeit der Gnade.
So, Revelation 8,
Offenbarung 8,
because Christ gets here on the cloud, right, and he comes here, then with the rainbow.
weil Christus geht ja hier auf die Wolke und dann kommt er und der Regenbogen ist eben um ihn herum.
Okay, so Revelation 8, verse 1.
Offenbarung 8, Vers 1.
And when he had opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven about the space of half an hour. So we know the seventh seal is opened here, right?
Wir wissen, das 7. Siegel wird hier
The
geöffnet.
destruction of Jerusalem.
Zerstörung von Jerusalem.
And then it says, And I saw the 7 angels which stood before God, and to them were given 7 trumpets. And another angel came and stood at the altar, having a golden censer, and there was given unto him much incense, that he should offer it with the prayers of all saints upon the golden altar, which was before the throne. So, he offers it now to the throne of grace, right?
Er bringt das jetzt vor den Thron der Gnade dar.
Okay. And the smoke of the incense which came with the prayers of the saints ascended up before God out of the angel's hand. So this is now the time when the 7th seal is opened. Okay.
Das ist jetzt diese Zeit, wenn das 7. Siegel geöffnet wird.
He's now interceding until verse 5.
Jetzt hält er Fürsprache bis Vers 5.
And the angel took the censer and filled it with fire off the altar and cast it into the earth. And there were voices and thunderings and lightnings and an earthquake. Right? So this is what we read in the quote. When he cast down the censer, he says, it is done. Right?
Das haben wir im Zitat gelesen. Wenn er das Räuchergefäß runterwirft, sagt er, es ist geschehen.
He that is just, let him be, no, he that is unjust, let him be unjust still, and he that is righteous, let him be righteous still. Okay.
Wer ungerecht ist, sei weiterhin ungerecht, und wer gerecht ist, sei weiterhin gerecht.
Then he gets here on the throne of glory, and that's Daniel 7.
Dann
Okay.
geht er auf den Thron der Herrlichkeit, und das ist eben Daniel 7.
Judgment, the throne is set, the judgment is set, the books are opened. Okay.
Also der Thron hat sich gesetzt, oder das Gericht hat sich gesetzt, der Thron ist aufgestellt und die Bücher werden geöffnet.
Just like here for Jerusalem, right?
Genauso wie es hier für Jerusalem
Now
geschehen
he
ist.
punishes Babylon. Okay.
Jetzt bestraft er Babylon.
Okay, good. Now let's go back to the notes.
Gehen wir jetzt zurück zu den Notizen.
And let us read this next quote
Wir lesen das nächste Zitat
under the heading The Executive Judgment.
unter der Überschrift Das ausführende Gericht.
It says, On the morning of October 23rd, 1879, about 2 o'clock, the Spirit of the Lord rested upon me, and I beheld scenes in the coming judgment. Language fails me in which to give an adequate description of the things which passed before me and of the effect they had upon my mind. The great day of the execution of God's judgment seemed to have come. So which judgment is she seeing?
Welches Gericht sieht sie?
Yeah. Executive judgment.
Das
Okay.
ausführende
So
Gericht.
she sees this final review.
Sie
Okay.
sieht diese finale Überprüfung.
10,000 times 10,000 were assembled before a large throne upon which was seated a person of majestic appearance. So what do we see here? 10,000 of thousands of angels, right? Like in Daniel.
Also hier sehen wir 10.000 mal 10.000 Engel, so wie in Daniel.
And the throne is set there, and one sits on the throne,
Der
right?
Thron ist dort aufgestellt und einer sitzt auf dem Thron.
A person of majestic appearance. Who would this be?
Eine Person mit majestätischem Aussehen, wer wäre das?
Christ.
Yeah, that's Christ now.
Das
Okay.
ist Christus,
Because it's the executive judgment.
weil das ist das ausführende Gericht.
So Daniel 7 says the judgment is set and the books are opened.
Und Daniel 7 hat gesagt, das Gericht hat sich gesetzt und die Bücher wurden geöffnet.
It says now, several books were before him, and upon the covers of each was written in letters of gold, which seemed like a burning flame of fire, ledger of heaven. One of these books, containing the names of those who claimed to believe the truth, was then opened. Immediately I lost sight of the countless millions about the throne, and only those who were professedly children of the light and of the truth engaged my attention. Okay, so why is this interesting here?
Warum ist das hier interessant?
Whose cases are only dealt with in this vision here?
Also in dieser Vision, wessen Fälle werden nur behandelt?
are those that profess to be children of God, right?
Diejenigen, die behauptet haben oder bekannt haben, Kinder Gottes zu sein.
Yes. So, why is this interesting? Because who only partakes in the investigative judgment?
Warum ist das interessant? Also wer nimmt nur teil am
Those
Untersuchungsgericht?
in the parable.
Yeah, those in the parables,
They
right?
also had the first birth.
Yeah.
Die in den Gleichnissen, die die erste Geburt hatten.
Only those that are in the book of life, right? Only those that are professed children of God. Okay.
Nur diejenigen, die im Buch des Lebens stehen, also die bekennende Kinder Gottes sind.
So therefore, this vision now deals with those that already now passed the investigative judgment as God's professed children, and now they come to the final review. And the cases are reviewed once more. Okay.
Diese Vision behandelt eben also diejenigen, die Teil im Untersuchungsgericht waren von dem bekennenden Volk Gottes und die jetzt hier deren Fälle in der finalen Überprüfung nochmal angeschaut werden.
Okay. Let's continue.
Lesen wir weiter.
As these persons were named one by one, and their good deeds mentioned, their countenances would light up with a holy joy that was reflected in every direction. But this did not seem to rest upon my mind with the greatest force. Another book was opened, wherein were recorded the sins of those who profess the truth. Under the general heading of selfishness came every other sin. Okay, so what's the root of all sin?
Was ist die Wurzel von
Self.
aller Sünde?
Self, right?
Selbst.
There were also headings over every column, and underneath these, opposite each name, were recorded in their respective columns the lesser sins. Under covetousness came falsehood, theft, robbery, fraud, and avarice. Under ambition came pride and extravagance. Jealousy stood at the head of malice, envy, and hatred. And intemperance headed a long list of fearful crimes, such as lasciviousness, adultery, indulgence of animal passions, etc. As I beheld, I was filled with inexpressible anguish and exclaimed, "Who can be saved? Who will stand justified before God? Whose robes are spotless? Who are faultless in the sight of a pure and holy God?" Okay, so this morning, right, we read Malachi chapter 3, at least in this quote by Sister White.
Heute Morgen haben wir diesen Zitat von Ellen White, Malachi 3, gelesen.
Let's go to Malachi chapter 3.
Gehen wir zu Malachi 3.
Let us read verse 1 and 2.
Wir lesen Vers 1 und 2.
It says, "Behold, I will send my messenger, and he shall prepare the way before me. And the Lord whom ye seek shall suddenly come to his temple." So where does he come to?
Wohin kommt er?
To the temple, right?
Zu seinem Tempel.
To cleanse and purify it now,
Um
okay?
ihn zu reinigen und zu läutern.
This morning we looked at, when he comes to the temple, it was which judgment?
Heute Morgen haben wir uns angeschaut, wenn er zum Tempel kommt, welches Gericht war das?
I mean, when he came, he was the final review, right? We separates the two classes.
Also als er kam, das war ja die finale Überprüfung,
Not
wo
here
er
No,
zwei
not in this verse. Yeah.
Klassen trennt. Aber in diesen Versen ist es nicht dasselbe.
No, I mean, this morning you made the point when he came to cleanse the temple, it was the executive judgment, right?
Also heute Morgen hat Bruder Mark den Punkt gemacht, dass wenn er zum Tempel kommt, dann ist es eben das ausführende Gericht, wo er die Klassen trennt.
But here we see he also comes to the temple when he's now investigating you, okay?
Aber hier sehen wir auch, dass er zum Tempel kommt, wenn er dich untersucht.
So comes the temple here, but here he still cleanses you,
Also er kommt zum Tempel hier, aber da reinigt er dich noch.
and then he comes to the temple to separate now the two classes, okay?
Und dann kommt er zum Tempel, um die zwei Klassen zu trennen.
Okay, because it says here, let's continue.
Lesen wir weiter, es sagt hier.
So he shall suddenly come to his temple, even the messenger of the covenant, whom ye delight in. Behold, he shall come, saith the Lord of hosts. But who may abide the day of his coming? And who shall stand when he appeareth? for he's like a refiner's fire, like a fuller's soap. So what does it say when he comes here to his temple?
Was sagt es hier, wenn zu seinem Tempel kommt?
Who may abide
Wer kann es ertragen?
the day of his coming? Who shall stand when he appeareth? Right?
Also den Tag seines Kommens ertragen und wer wird bestehen, wenn erscheint?
What does Sister White say in this quote in the executive judgment when he opens the books?
Und was sagt Ellen White in diesem Zitat über das ausführende Gericht, wenn er die Bücher öffnet?
Who shall be able to stand?
Yeah, it says, who can be saved? Who will stand justified before God? Whose robes are spotless? Who can be faultless in the sight of a pure and holy God? Right?
Das sagt er hier, wer kann gerettet werden? Wer kann vor Gott gerechtfertigt werden? Wessen Gewänder sind makellos? Wer ist fehlerlos also vor Gottes einem heiligen und reinen Gott?
Okay, so therefore we can see this repeat, right?
Daher können wir diese Wiederholung sehen.
Yeah. When he comes to investigative judgment, it's like, whoa, who can stand this? And when you come here, same illustration, right?
Wenn es zum Untersuchungsgericht kommt, dann sagt es, wer kann bestehen bei dem, aber wenn er dort wieder zum Tempel kommt, dann sagt es auch, wer kann bestehen.
Okay, so let's go back to the quote
Gehen wir zurück zum Zitat
and let us read this next paragraph.
und wir lesen den nächsten Absatz.
It says, as the Holy One upon the throne slowly turned the leaves of the ledger and his eyes rested for a moment upon individuals, his glance seemed to burn into their very souls. And at the same moment every word and action of their lives passed before their minds as clearly as though traced before their vision in letters of fire. Right, these are these burning eyes. This was also when he came into the temple to execute judgment, right?
Und diese brennenden Augen, und das war auch dasselbe, als er in den Tempel kam, um das Gericht auszuführen.
Trembling seized them, and their faces turned pale. Their first appearance when around the throne was that of careless indifference. But how changed their appearance now? The feeling of security is gone, and in its place is the nameless terror. A dread is upon every soul, lest he shall be found among those who are wanting. Every eye is riveted upon the face of the one upon the throne, and as his solemn searching eye sweeps over that company, there's a quaking of heart. For they are self-condemned without one word being uttered. In anguish of soul each declares his own guilt, and with terrible vividness sees that by sinning he has thrown away the precious boon of eternal life. So it says here, and not one word is uttered because all they are self-condemned, right?
Es sagt, nicht ein Wort wird gesprochen, weil sie sind alle selbst verdammt.
Where do we see this?
Wo sehen wir das?
Let's go back to Matthew 22.
Gehen wir zurück zu Matthäus 22.
That's why they fled before him in the temple. His searching eyes, he felt self-condemned and he just
Yes.
fled away from him.
Deswegen sind sie auch beim Tempel eben geflohen, weil er hat mit diesen durchforschenden Augen sie angeblickt und dann waren sie selbst verdammt und sind geflohen.
So let's go to Matthew 22, verse 11
Gehen wir zu Matthäus 22, Vers 11
to 12.
bis 12.
Why Adam fled away.
Yes.
Deswegen ist Adam auch geflohen.
It says, when the king came to see the guests, he saw there a man which had not on a wedding garment. So we studied this, right? Who's this king?
Das haben wir studiert.
Christ.
Wer ist der König?
Christ, right?
Christus.
It's now the final review here, right?
Das ist jetzt die finale
He sees
Überprüfung.
whether you have the wedding garment.
Er sieht, ob du das Hochzeitsgewand anhast.
And he saith unto him, Friend, how camest thou in hither not having a wedding garment? And he was speechless. Yeah. So you're self-condemned, you cannot answer anything.
Wenn
Okay?
du selbst verdammt bist, dann kannst du nichts mehr antworten.
And it says then in the last sentence of the quote, it says, in anguish of soul each declares his own guilt, and with terrible vividness sees that by sinning he has thrown away the precious boon of eternal life. So everybody now confesses their sins, right?
Also den letzten Satz haben wir noch gelesen. Also jeder bekennt jetzt seine Sünden.
But it's too late, right?
Aber es ist zu spät.
So if you go to Matthew 27,
Gehen wir zu Matthäus 27.
beginning verse 2
Und wir fangen in Vers 2
to
an
5.
bis 5.
And when they had bound him, they led him away and delivered him to Pontius Pilate the governor. Then Judas, which had betrayed him, when he saw that he was condemned, repented himself and brought again the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and elders, and saying, I have sinned, in that I have betrayed the innocent blood. And they said, What is that to us? See thou to that. And he cast down the pieces of silver in the temple and departed and went and hanged himself.
Right out of the temple.
Yes, so what did he do? He said, I have sinned. He confessed his sin.
Before Christ.
Yeah, before Christ, and then hanged himself, right?
Also er hat seine Sünden vor Christus bekannt, er hat gesagt, ich habe gesündigt und dann hat er sich selbst erhängt.
Okay, so and therefore, yeah, the Lord will bring this great conviction and condemnation upon us, self-condemnation that is, okay?
Deswegen der Herr wird diese große Selbstverdammnis über uns bringen.
Because He will just show us our sin as it really is before Him.
Weil er wird uns unsere Sünde zeigen, wie sie in echt vor ihm ist.
Okay, unless obviously our sins are blotted out here, okay?
Es sei denn natürlich, dass unsere Sünden hier ausgetilgt werden.
Then no condemnation will come upon us, okay?
Dann wird keine Verdammnis über uns kommen.
Because it says when you go to John chapter 5,
Weil wenn wir zu Johannes 5 gehen,
verse 22,
Vers 22,
says, For the Father judgeth no man, but hath committed all judgment unto the Son. Which judgment hath he committed to him?
welches Gericht hatte ihm
The execution.
Yeah, the execution, right?
die Ausführung?
Because it says in verse 27,
Sagt es in Vers 27.
and hath given him authority to execute judgment also because he's the Son of Man, right? So now verse 24.
Jetzt lesen wir Vers 24.
Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that heareth my word, and believeth on him that sent me, hath everlasting life, and shall not come into condemnation, but is passed from death unto life. So what will you not come into?
Also in was wirst du nicht kommen?
Condemnation. Okay?
Verdammnis.
Sis White has this quote where she says this final review is for the righteous, no judgment at all. Okay?
White hat dieses Zitat, wo sie sagt, die finale Überprüfung ist für die Gerechten überhaupt kein Gericht.
Yeah, because their sins are blotted out, there's no condemnation coming upon them.
Weil ihre Sünden sind ausgetilgt und da kommt keine Verdammnis über sie.
Okay, very good. So let's go back to the quote.
Gehen wir jetzt zum Zitat zurück.
Because in the next paragraph it's just same quote, just a few paragraphs down. Okay.
Im nächsten Absatz, das ist dasselbe Zitat, nur ein paar weitere Absätze hinunter.
Because it says then, next paragraph here,
Also lesen wir hier diesen nächsten Absatz.
it says the question was then asked. What was asked?
Was wurde gefragt?
Question.
Die
Right?
Frage.
So this we know when in the final review Jesus asked these hard questions.
Wir
Okay.
wissen, in der finalen Überprüfung stellt Jesus diese schwierigen Fragen.
What hast thou done with your talent? Or,
Was hast du mit deinem Talent gemacht?
he asked these hard questions to
Adam and Eve.
Adam and Eve. Yes.
Er hat diese schwierigen Fragen Adam und Eva
He
gestellt.
also asked the 3 Hebrew boys and Daniel these hard questions, right?
Er hat Daniel und die 3 Hebräer auch diese schwierigen Fragen gestellt.
But they could answer them and therefore they were 10 times better. Okay.
Also sie konnten sie beantworten und deswegen waren sie 10-mal besser.
Okay. So let's read here.
Also lesen wir das hier.
It says the question was then asked, Why have you not washed your robes of character and made them white in the blood of the Lamb? God sent His Son into the world, not to condemn the world, but that through Him it might be saved. My love for you has been more self-denying than a mother's love. It was that I might blot out your dark record of iniquity, and put the cup of salvation to your lips, that I suffered the death of the cross, bearing the weight and curse of your guilt. The pangs of death and the horrors of the darkness of the tomb I endured, that I might conquer him who had the power of death, unbar the prison house, and open for you the gates of life. I submitted to shame and agony because I loved you with an infinite love, and would bring back my wayward, wandering sheep to the paradise of God, to the tree of life. That life of bliss which I purchased for you at such a cost, you have disregarded. Shame, reproach, and ignominy, such as your master bore for you, you have shunned. The privileges he died to bring within your reach have not been appreciated. You would not be partaker of his sufferings, and you cannot now be partaker with him of his glory. Then were uttered these solemn words: He that is unjust, let him be unjust still, and he which is filthy, let him be filthy still, and he that is righteous, let him be righteous still, and he that is holy, let him be holy still. The book then closed, and the mantle fell from the person on the throne, revealing the terrible glory of the Son of God. So here we see, at the end of the final review, what is Jesus uttering?
Also wir sehen hier am Ende der finalen Überprüfung, was spricht Jesus aus?
It is done.
It is done, right?
Es ist geschehen.
So he also says then, he that is unjust, let him be unjust still.
Er sagt hier auch, wer ungerecht ist, sei weiterhin ungerecht.
And so on and so forth. Yes, and it's when he says also, it is done.
Und da sagt er ihm auch, es ist geschehen.
Okay, because when we go now to the next quote,
Und wir jetzt zum nächsten Zitat.
this is where God now delivers his people in the seventh plague,
Da
right?
befreit Gott sein Volk in der 7. Plage.
It says, it is at midnight that God manifests his power for the deliverance of his people. The sun appears shining in its strength. Signs and wonders follow in quick succession. The wicked look with terror and amazement upon the scene, while the righteous behold with solemn joy the tokens of their deliverance. Everything in nature seems turned out of its course. The streams cease to flow. Dark, heavy clouds come up and clash against each other. In the midst of the angry heavens is one clear space of indescribable glory, whence comes the voice of God like the sound of many waters, saying, It is done. Revelation 16, verse 17. What does the voice say?
Was sagt die Stimme?
It is done.
Es ist geschehen.
Who says it is done?
Und wer sagt, es ist geschehen?
The Father, right?
Vater.
Okay. So, but also Christ, right?
Aber auch Christus.
So, just like here, where Jesus said it is finished, the Father said it is finished, right?
Genauso wie hier, wo Jesus gesagt hat, es ist vollbracht, hat auch der Vater gesagt, es ist vollbracht.
But the voice of God that delivers them, that's why it says it's the Father, right?
Aber die Stimme Gottes, die sie befreit, sagt einweit, ist der Vater.
Because he then proclaims the hour and day of Jesus coming.
Weil
right?
er verkündet die Stunde und den Tag von Jesu kommen.
Okay. And it goes on to say here,
Sagt dann hier weiter.
that voice shakes the heavens and the earth. There's a mighty earthquake, such as was not since men were upon the earth, so mighty an earthquake and so great. Verse 17 and 18. So
But that would be the middle. That would be the first middle.
that would be this here.
Das wäre
Because it's the
das,
seventh plague. Right?
das ist die 7. Plage.
So would be here when the seventh plague begins.
Das wäre ja hier, wenn die 7. Plage anfängt.
So that's where that dilemma.
Yes. So I mean midnight begins here, right?
Mitternacht fängt ja hier an.
And it's this period when the seventh plague. Now, because let's go to Revelation 16.
Das ist diese Zeitspanne der 7. Plage dann.
Yeah, just
Gehen wir zur Offenbarung 17.
the point I'm making, right? I mean, I get your point. It says that voice shakes the heavens and the earth, right?
Mhm.
So, now, the only point
The
that
execution of the judgment.
I'm not arguing, I'm just clarifying something, right? So, because the heavens and the earth is shaking, when he says it is done in the middle there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. It's the destruction of Jerusalem.
No, that's the destruction of Jerusalem, right? At the end of the final review.
Also am Ende der finalen Überprüfung ist ja die Zerstörung von Jerusalem oder Erschütterung von
He
Himmel und Erde,
executes the judgment.
wenn er das Gericht ausführt.
Ah, yes, okay. No, it's just, I was thinking about, because in the fractal above, you have the shaking of the heavens and the earth there, and then you have it at the end. I was wondering if this was showing the same thing, but maybe it does, but maybe it just doesn't.
Also im Fraktal oben ist das hier ja parallel mit dem und das ist hier die Erschütterung von Himmel und Erde. Und hier, what did you say about this?
Das und also the destruction of Babylon.
Ja, hier bei der Zerstörung von Babylon ist auch Erschütterung von Himmel und Erde, deswegen hat Marx sich gefragt, ob da irgendwie Parallelen sind.
Yes. Okay, but I mean this here, it is done in this quote, right? Is in the 7th plague, right?
Also dieses Es ist geschehen im Zitat, das ist eben in der 7. Plage.
Because she quotes here Revelation 16 verse 17, right?
Weil sie zitiert Offenbarung 16, Vers 17.
And so when we go there, Revelation 16, 17.
Gehen wir da in den Bibeln hin, Offenbarung 16, Vers 17.
It says, "And the 7th angel poured out his vial into the air, and there came a great voice out of the temple of heaven from the throne saying, It is done." Right? So here it's when the 7th angel pours out, this is when this voice comes, "It is done."
Also wenn der 7. Engel das ausgießt, dann sagt ihm diese Stimme, es ist geschehen.
Can we open the window maybe for 5 minutes? So, alright. So therefore we can see that this "it is done" would be here. Right?
Daher können wir sehen, dass dieses Es ist geschehen dann hier wäre.
Good. So when the 7th plague begins. Okay.
Wenn die 7. Plage anfängt.
Alright. Yeah, everybody follows?
Kann jeder folgen?
Now, just go a little bit further down in this quote. Let's just read this paragraph and then it's easier to follow.
Also wir lesen noch den Absatz fertig.
So that voice shakes the heaven and the earth. There's a mighty earthquake, such as was not since men were upon the earth, so mighty an earthquake and so great. The firmament appears to open and shut. The glory from the throne of God seems flashing through. The mountains shake like a reed in the wind, and ragged rocks are scattered on every side. There's a roar of a coming tempest. The sea is lashed into fury. There's heard the shriek of a hurricane, like the voice of demons upon a mission of destruction. The whole earth heaves and swells like the waves of the sea. Its surface is breaking up, its very foundations seem to be giving way. Mountain chains are sinking, inhabited islands disappear. The seaports that have become like Sodom for wickedness are swallowed up by the angry waters. Babylon the Great has come in remembrance before God, to give unto her the cup of the wine of the fierceness of his wrath. Great hailstones, every one about the weight of a talent, are doing their work of destruction. The proudest cities of the earth are laid low. The lordly palaces upon which the world's great men have lavished their wealth in order to glorify themselves are crumbling to ruin before their eyes. Prison walls are rent asunder, and God's people who have been held in bondage for their faith are set free. So here we see they are now set free, right?
Hier sehen wir jetzt, wie sie freigesetzt
That must
werden.
be, because we always looked at it like it's progressive, but that must be marking that judgment, like, you know, like if you go above Babylon,
Let's see.
yeah, you get judged there, and it's also where you're set free, so it must be marking this waymark.
Yes. Let's see, right?
Yeah, we often wonder why that was, but now when you see this fractal, you can see it's also paralleling the judgment above.
Also das wäre eben diese Wegmarke und dort wird eben freigesetzt und das parallel zu dieser Wegmarke, also das Gericht über Babylon,
Yeah, where you're set free.
wo
Also,
du
right?
freigesetzt wirst.
Yes. Okay. And we can see, because also in Egypt, what came upon the first one here?
Und in Ägypten konnten wir sehen, was kam über die Erstgeborenen,
That's slain.
Yeah, executive judgment, it says, right?
das ausführende Gericht.
So that was this beginning of the punishment on Babylon.
Das
Okay.
war der Anfang von der Bestrafung über Babylon.
Okay. Good. So,
There's also what's interesting, it's also the destruction of Jerusalem there at the same place, because in Egypt it's also all those that didn't have the blood on the doorpost got slain, you know, that were not part of Egypt. So it's interesting, you've got both, it's marking the destruction of Babylon and the destruction of Jerusalem. And if you go to the one above,
Same.
but the same thing. It's
Yes.
some trying to also show us this point.
Das ist auch interessant, weil also die Erstgeborenen von den Ägyptern, die erschlagen wurden, wäre ja die Zerstörung von Babylon und zur selben Zeit wurden aber auch die erschlagen von den Hebräern, die nicht das Blut an den Türpfosten haben, also das ist die Zerstörung von Jerusalem. Deswegen hat man beides irgendwie hier und hier oben ist eben auch, wäre dann beides.
Yes. Yeah, so there's some nice things we can glean from this.
Also gibt es ein paar schöne Dinge, die wir daher sehen können.
Yes. Okay, now let's go to this last quote for this evening.
Jetzt gehen wir zu dem letzten Zitat für heute Abend.
And that's this quote where this White puts Jesus still in the sanctuary in the 7 last plagues.
Und
Okay.
das ist dieses Zitat, wo Ellen White Jesus markiert, dass er in den 7 letzten Plagen noch im Heiligtum ist.
It says here, about 4 months since, I had a vision of events all in the future, and I saw the time of trouble such as never was. Jesus told me it was the time of Jacob's trouble, and that we should be delivered out of it by the voice of God. So here's same scenery, right? They enter in the time of trouble, and God's voice will deliver them.
Das ist dieselbe Szene, also sie gehen in die Zeit der Trübsal rein und Gottes Stimme befreit sie.
Just before we entered it, we all received the seal of the living God. And then I saw the 4 angels seize to hold the 4 winds. And I saw famine, pestilence, and sword. Nation rose against nation, and the whole world was in confusion. Then we cried to God for deliverance day and night, till we began to hear the bells on Jesus' garment. And I saw Jesus rise up in the holiest, and as he came out, we heard the tinkling bells, and knew our high priest was coming out. So Jesus comes now out of the sanctuary, right?
Jesus kommt jetzt aus dem Heiligtum raus,
When he says it is done.
wo er
Okay.
sagt, es ist geschehen.
So, and then it says, then we heard the voice of God, which shook the heavens and the earth, and gave the 144,000 day and hour of Jesus coming. So that would be then here, right?
Das wäre hier,
When he says it is done.
wenn er sagt, es ist geschehen.
Okay. And then it says, then the saints were free, united and full of the glory of God, for he had turned their captivity. And I saw a flaming cloud come where Jesus stood, and he laid off his priestly garment and put on his kingly robe, took his place on the cloud, which carried him to the east, where it first appeared to the saints on earth, a small black cloud, which was the sign of the Son of Man. So now she says here, Christ now gets on this cloud here, with which kind of robes?
Jetzt sagt sie, Christus geht auf diese Wolke mit was für Gewändern?
Kingly robes, right?
Königlichen
And he
Gewändern.
comes now from here to here, okay?
Er kommt jetzt von hier bis dort.
But at first seems to be a contradiction, right?
Also zuerst scheint das ein Widerspruch zu sein.
But it's just the same as when she puts him here in the sanctuary during the 7 last plagues, right?
Und sie setzt ihn hier ins Heiligtum während den 7 letzten Plagen.
But we have other quotes where she says, at the close of ovation, what does Jesus do?
Es gibt andere Zitate, wo sie sagt, am Ende der Gnadenzeit, was macht Jesus?
Leave the sanctuary.
Yeah, he leaves the sanctuary, puts on the kingly robes, gets on the cloud and comes, right?
Er verlässt das Heiligtum, macht die priesterlichen Gewänder weg, zieht die königlichen Gewänder an und kommt
Okay, on the cloud.
auf der Wolke.
Okay, so in this sense, we need to bring these things together. So, literally in the plagues, when he's on the cloud, he has always the kingly robes on. Okay.
Wir müssen diese Dinge zusammenbringen, weil buchstäblich, wenn er auf der Wolke kommt, hat er immer nur die königlichen Gewänder an.
Yeah, but when you bring them line upon line into the Sunday law, you know that he sits here still on the throne of grace until here. Okay.
Wenn man das aber Linie auf Linie zusammenbringt und ins Sonntagsgesetz setzt, dann hat er hier diese priesterlichen Gewänder an bis hier.
He sits on the throne of grace.
Sitzt auf dem Thron der Gnade bis hier.
Because this is the message, come out of her, my people, and she parallels it to the triumphal entry, which is, thy king cometh unto thee.
Yes.
So the king's coming.
Yes.
Diese Botschaft kommt aus ihr heraus, mein Volk, und sie setzt es parallel mit dem triumphalen Einzug, wo es sagt, dein König kommt zu dir.
Yeah, so it's a king coming. Okay.
Also das ist der König, der kommt.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so therefore we must always understand where we are and therefore what is illustrated. Okay.
Also wir müssen immer verstehen, wo wir sind und was dargestellt
So
wird.
for instance here in the Sunday law, he sits here on this cloud also coming, but here it's still really grace open for you, okay?
Also im Sonntagsgesetz sitzt er hier auf der Wolke und kommt, aber in Wirklichkeit ist noch Gnade für dich.
But in the literal plagues, he is here on the cloud, but Sister White still puts him in the sanctuary, even though there's no grace anymore for you, okay?
In den buchstäblichen Plagen, da setzt ihn ein weit, also
He
man
sits on the cloud, but he's still in the sanctuary, even though there's no literal grace for
also
you.
er sitzt auf der Wolke in den buchstäblichen 7 Plagen, aber ein Weit setzt ihn dort noch ins Heiligtum, obwohl keine Gnade mehr für dich offen ist.
What I also, when they saw him coming, they were terrified when they saw him coming, but he says, my grace is sufficient for thee, and he pours upon them the latter rain. That's the end, you know, and then their faces all light up, and so you can see that it's illustrating the same point.
Yeah, and even in the 7 last plagues.
Yeah.
Also in den 7 letzten Plagen, da, wenn sie dann auf der Wolke kommen sehen, dann haben sie auch plötzlich einen großen Schrecken. Aber dann sagt er, meine Gnade ist für euch genügend, und dann gießt er den Heiligen Geist aus und dann leuchten ihre Gesichter wieder auf.
Yes, it's just the same repeating patterns over and over, okay?
Es ist einfach dasselbe, sich wiederholende Muster.
And for instance, right, we need to always understand, are we in the type or are we in the antitype and all these things, okay?
Wir müssen immer verstehen, sind wir im Typus oder sind wir im Antitypus?
Or are we still where grace is open or not, okay?
Sind wir dort, wo noch Gnade ist oder wo keine Gnade
Because
ist?
for instance, right, when you come to the 7th plague here,
Wenn man
in the Sunday law,
im Sonntagsgesetz zu der 7. Plage ankommt,
it says, what does God do at the 7th plague?
was macht Gott an der 7. Plage?
His voice, what does it say?
Was sagt es über seine Stimme?
Announces
Sie verkündet
day and hour of Jesus coming,
den
right?
Tag und Stunde von Jesu Wiederkunft.
But does he in the Sunday law?
Aber macht er das im Sonntagsgesetz?
Is that suddenly now prophetic time in the Sunday law?
Gibt es plötzlich
No,
prophetische Zeit im Sonntagsgesetz?
But there
Nein.
will be something that will just illustrate this, okay?
Things that are going to shortly
Yeah,
come to
things that
pass.
shortly come to pass.
Aber es
Okay?
wird eben etwas sein, was es darstellt, nämlich die Dinge, die in Kürze geschehen sollen.
But in the literal plague, 7th plague, will he literally pronounce time again?
Aber in der buchstäblichen
Ja.
7. Plage wird er buchstäblich wieder eine Zeit verkünden.
Okay, so therefore we must always be careful. Where are we? Okay, is it the perfect fulfillment or just the partial fulfillment of it? Okay.
Ja, und deswegen, wir müssen dann immer wissen, also wo wir in der Zeit stehen, ob das jetzt die teilweise Erfüllung ist oder die vollkommene Erfüllung.
Or is it there where still grace is or no grace and all these things?
Oder
Okay.
ist es dort, wo noch Gnade ist oder keine Gnade mehr ist und all diese Dinge.
Okay, good. And as we could see, what takes place in the investigative judgment is just simply repeated in principle in this final review. Okay.
Und wir konnten sehen, also das, was im Untersuchungsgericht stattfindet, das wird einfach, wie ist das, repeat?
Yeah, repeated in principle here in this final review.
Das wird im Prinzip in dieser finalen Überprüfung
It's
wiederholt.
obviously, and it's obviously parallel in the bigger fractal.
Yes.
Das ist auch parallel zu den größeren
Now,
Faktoren.
what I mean is, you got at the destruction of Jerusalem, you got it is done, and at the end of the 7th plague, you got
Yes.
it is done.
It is done, look be here, and it is done.
Yeah, and you also got he that is unjust, he that is unjust. So
Yes,
it's
exactly.
showing you the same thing over and over.
Yes.
Da bei der Zerstörung von Jerusalem ist eben, es ist geschehen, so wie es hier ist und auch dort am Ende. Deswegen, er sagt auch, wer ungerecht ist, sei weiterhin ungerecht, eben an beiden Stellen.
Yes, exactly. Okay. So, and here judgment is said, books are open. Here judgment is said, the books are opened, right?
Also hier hat sich das Gericht gesetzt, die Bücher werden geöffnet und auch dort.
Here, who can stand when he appeareth? Here, who can stand when he appeareth?
Und
Okay.
da ist es, wenn er sagt, wer kann stehen, wenn er erscheint, und dort auch.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that's also parallels with
Yes.
Das ist eben auch parallel.
Exactly. Okay. So, and also, in yesterday's study also, we also saw that what is marked here is also marked there, right?
Und gestern in dem Studium haben wir auch gesehen, was hier markiert ist, ist auch dort.
So there was sleeping and awakening here. There was a sleeping and awakening here. Okay.
Also es war ein Schlafen und Aufwachen hier und ein Schlafen und Aufwachen dort.
falling on the face here, falling on the face there.
Dass
Okay.
man dort auf Angesicht fällt und hier aufs Angesicht fällt.
Heavens are opened here, heavens are opened there. Okay.
Dass die Himmel hier geöffnet sind und die Himmel dort geöffnet sind.
And so on and so forth, right?
Und so weiter.
Okay. So therefore the Lord wants to show us something with this. Okay.
Der Herr möchte uns daher etwas damit zeigen.
It's just this. Yeah. Here's still grace and here's no grace anymore.
Also
Okay.
hier ist noch Gnade und dort ist keine Gnade mehr.
Okay. Good. I hope everybody could follow
Ich hoffe, jeder konnte folgen,
and that we take these thoughts
dass wir diese Gedanken mitnehmen.
and therefore that we are careful where we stick these things. Okay.
Dass wir sorgfältig damit sind, wo wir die Sachen
So in
hinplatzieren.
future, when we read about it is done, that we don't always mark it at the same point, but that we think of is it here or is it there? Okay.
Also, dass wir in Zukunft, wenn wir irgendwo lesen, es ist geschehen, dass wir es nicht alles an dieselbe Stelle setzen, sondern immer nachdenken, ist es jetzt hier oder ist es dort?
Okay. Very good. Then let's close with our prayer.
Dann lasst uns mit unserer Gebetsrunde abschließen.